All right, everyone. Might wait a little bit longer for people to trickle in, but I did want to get started. Welcome back to another Desk Side Chat. Today, we'll keep it relatively brief, but I wanted to start by going into, we just started this RegPack recipes project because we wanted to make sure that as you're expanding your use of RegPack, and especially after you had that first project under the belt, some tangible ways to sort of walk through creating a new project, especially if it's different from the one that you had set up before. So, and the first recipe that we created, I'll go ahead and start sharing my screen right now, is a donation project, which I've talked about briefly in a past chat, but basically what we're going to do today is go through what the basic steps are that's outlined here, how you can follow along when future ones come out. I'm sure we'll be covering others as we go along, but this is the first of hopefully many different recipes. We want to make sure that it's easy to, especially for something where it's just an extra use that you can have for RegPack, and you might not necessarily need a project manager, but some guidance on how to go ahead and set something like this up. So without further ado, I'll get started. But today, definitely, I'll try to make sure there's lots of time for Q&A. And please, definitely, whether it's something that's related to what I'm talking about, or if it spurs some new ideas that you might have or questions that you might have, or if it's something that you've been waiting to talk about and haven't quite gotten addressed outside of these sessions. So go ahead and start chatting those questions now, and I'll go ahead and get started on walking through how to create a donation project. So, and we'll be sending these out as we create them in our admin email list. Feel free to reach out to our support team if you're not signed up and getting those. But these are going to be going out regularly, but you're also going to be able to find them from our help center searching RegPack recipes. So for a donation project, we do actually have a template that we are rolling out that you'll be able to go ahead and build out or select from your project, create project. I'll go ahead and show it once I walk through these steps, but just so the steps that we're going to go through, you want to create the project, choose the template, build out your offerings, your packages, check in with the payments teams. You want to make sure if you're collecting donations that they're going through, your merchant account's good to go, and then test it out, make sure it's working as you would want it to, as well as not just the user experience, but of course the data once you have those donations. If there's specific ways that you want to be able to follow up with people or report on the donations that are coming in, that's another great use of testing, so that way you know what's going to come as you roll it out, not just to make sure that it works for people to pay. So without further ado, I'll go from the webinar project that I've been using. You can start from down here and go to create new project, or you can go from project settings and into create new project. So this right here is the brand new donations template. So if we go from here, from the create project wizard, excuse me, and then go into your donation template, you've got a couple different options here. And it's basically just the USD donations, or you've got your standard versus a more robust donations project. So if we just go from the standard one, we'll go ahead and name this project webinar donations example. We're not collecting donations. You've also, this also brings up one other thing. If you are on a month-to-month plan, you'll see now that there's no longer the $50 charge for copy projects. Now on an annual plan, of course, those are always free, but during this time, we're adding this as a benefit for all RegPack clients to be able to create as many projects as they need to with no additional charge. You might see this option here to have a project manager. For this type of project, if you're following along the recipe, it's not typically something you need, but this is definitely something you should be having if you feel like you need assistance making sure that your project's set up the way that you need it to be, and that you have a pair of RegPack guys taking a look at the project. So it might take a minute or so to generate, and in the meantime, I do have a couple questions that are coming in. So question, how do we archive the last summer and not get charged but keep the participants' info? It looks like our chat host helped address that question, but essentially archiving is something where the information is not lost. I can go into how to archive or what an archive status is. If you want to keep that information, you'd keep the project. So last summer, ideally, the recommended steps would be last summer would be a separate project from your this summer registration. Once that's set up, your last summer, if you don't want to have user information porting, which is if you have a copy project and the accounts from last year wouldn't be transferred over as people are logging in those details, then you'd be able to go ahead and select the users that you don't need or all the users, and then go ahead and archive. So yeah, just as was addressed in the chat. So we've created our new project. And now it's showing us those forms that we had. You won't see any users on the front part. It's first going to take you here so you can edit the forms as you need to. And something that is going to be important to set up is to make sure how you want the flow to function. You might not need a ton of different forms for a donation project, but these are some standards that we have, so it's an easy way to get started. So from our first form here, we'll go ahead and take a look at what the fields are. And again, there's a lot of different fields here. So again, you might not need all of them. First, you've got the basic information, and then you'd have your product selection, which would be your different donation options. Then you'd have your confirmation, payment options, and checkout. Now, the payment options, that's going to be for if you want to have an auto bill option, which is great for if you want to have people who are making continuous donations. Definitely very popular now in terms of fundraising to be able to have small donations that people can make on a more regular basis, and definitely very highly effective. So let's start with what information we need, since that's where we are right now. And let's say we do want all this information, but we don't want people to necessarily need to create an account. So that is something that you will be able to have set up where they're not creating an account by starting with making that form anonymous. So this is the setting that you have here, which means that they don't need to have a recognized account or login in order to get to this form. Once you have that setting on, then you'll go into your project settings, you'll go to registration, and then the start page you'll want to have as registrant information. Go ahead and save, and we'll go back to our forms. Now, you might, as you're going through a donation project, you might be going through and taking out some of these forms or trying to combine some of these forms. Typically, the reason why we have a good handful of forms, even for something like a donation project, is because we found that people like to be able to make progress through registration, as opposed to going down the line with a long list of questions on one page. So being able to click next, make progress is the reason why we have these different form fields. But if you say don't need a confirmed selection, or you want the product selection to be on the same page as the registration information, that is something that you're going to be able to set up. Now, when it comes to the different donation options, so if we were to just go to product selection right now, just to take a look, you wouldn't see really any options, but you would have what's called the products and services widget. So the way that you add that, if you want to have that on this form, you can. You can also always choose to add payments and orders, products and services on any other form. So if you wanted to keep that on the same form as registrant information, that is an option you'll have. And now when it comes to your actual donation options, we'll go ahead and create some products just as an example. So these are some standard settings that you can have for a category. Only select one or a mandatory category. You may have like 3 different packages where somebody's going to only select one, or you may have a couple different things that you're providing in exchange for the donation and want to have the ability to select more than one. A mandatory category would be if you have this is the main category to where if you need to make sure that they select something, you want to put that on so that way it'll stop their progress if they aren't. These settings you probably won't want to have quotas for because it's donations, but that's just in case you had like a class with a couple different options to toggle from and you wanted to make sure that you have a limited number of spots available. So that's the quota settings. Now when it comes to the product settings, we'll create that product and then we're going to be in the services, merchandise, activities. So let's start big. We'll go with our main donation. The big deal, $1,000 donation. That's to the people who are really feeling generous. We'll start with the big one. And then when it comes to your donation option, here's where it's interesting. You may want to have this be one where they can just select that one option. If you do want to start with like small different options for donations or allow them to customize the amount that they're going to donate, you'll be turning this off. So if we were to, for example, start with like increments of 10, they could select as many increments of 10 as they wanted, or you could even start with 1 and then they have that complete control. We'll start with this one package option that we have. If there's something that's a gift or something like that that you're adding in exchange, you can add in a description or even source an image using HTML. We won't be adding a start and end date since this is something that we want people to be able to select at any time. And then when it comes to these other settings, such as the allocation settings or the availability or the quota, again, the quota we won't need to take care of. You may want to take a look at your locking settings. If you want, as soon as they've ordered it, for that to be the option, you'd add that. But if you want people, and then of course, if you want to make sure that they don't remove it after they've made a payment, that's where you want to keep this one on. So we'll go ahead and create that product. And now that we've gotten this product created, we can go ahead and just copy it. So that way we have that same structure that we had before. All we got to do is change this to, you know what, let's give an option for 1 tier down. We'll do the gold. So on and so forth. So these are the options that I'm creating for the donation. I won't go through all of them, but if you want to keep making more options, give people a few different selections. That way they feel like they have some level of control, some choice, as well as if you have different packages that you're offering to show gratitude for these donations. That's where you'd be setting these up here. Now, when it comes to structuring this in the way that you have on your forms, or how people are going to pay for it, we'll go back into here. We'll keep this structure for now. We can clean it up or add in the products here if we want to. It's very easy to do that, but I'll keep this structure, and then I'm going to go into the next step, which is going to be the payment option. So if I have terms and conditions, all I have to do for here, this is going to have an e-signature form. The settings are designed so that if somebody signs, that it's locked once signed, and then I'll just paste my terms or a link to where the terms and conditions are. So now when it comes to the auto bill plan. So you'll notice when you're getting started with the template, it'll always have the some sample plans to get started on. I want to make sure we create a new auto bill plan using RegPack Flow technology. So once I go to my plan, and I want to keep it not admin only. So I want to be able to have people select this option or display it, or choose to pay in full. Once I have these payment options, I want to typically keep the settings the way that they're designed here. So that way people are going to know exactly how it's going to be calculated. These are designed to make sure that calculations are made accurately, and if people miss payments or make payments in advance, that it's recalculating in a way that's efficient and effective. So we'll just go ahead and go to the next step and then take a look at our payment schedule. So if we're doing installments, we want to figure out first, well, when are we going to start the installments? We want to start either on a specific date where you start rolling things out, or you want to have when the plan is selected. So if you have it when the plan is selected, you won't necessarily need to have an initial deposit to be paid, but this is if you have like a fixed amount that's going to be less than what the total is, or more than what the percentage would be. So if you have, for example, like a $50 deposit, then, or like across the board, that's what the starting amount is to start on your plan. Or if you have a specific percentage, like they need to pay a good amount in advance up front, 50%. Let's keep the $50 deposit just so we know what that looks like. And then we'll go into our payment structure. So the automatically calculated, the number of payments is going to be based on when our payment end date is. So if we want to have regular installments over the next coming months, let's go end of the year. Or we end December 1st, and then if we have a separate holiday drive, they're not in conflict with each other. Now, once you have the end date, that's where these two different options will come into play. If you had an end date that was in August, say, then the automatically calculate the number of payments would be a little bit different. So it's going to take those two data points when they start the plan, or when your start date is, and then also when you have the end date. If you wanted to have a set number of payments, and let's say we only want 3 payments, what that will do is once they select the plan, it'll calculate those 3 installments based on your frequency that you're setting here. Let's go ahead and say we want to have it automatically calculated so that once they selected, they're going to be making regular payments all the way through December 1st or the end of November. So now when it comes to the frequency of your payments, you've got the monthly options, 1st, 15th, end of the month, or based on the date they selected it. This is definitely a common one, why it's the default. But let's say if you want to have the biweekly payments. Now, from now until December, that's going to be a lot of payments. But this is an option that people have asked about, and one of the reasons why it's beneficial is that it gives people more flexibility to make smaller payments in a higher frequency. Also very beneficial if you have people who are making regular payments towards like a class. If they're showing up regularly every week, then you're going to be able to have those options like biweekly. For our donations, let's keep it monthly. We could do maybe end of the month, and then we'll go ahead and create that schedule. Now, question about the auto bill. If we want it tied to a specific product, so it bills on the close of registration. So it sounds like 2 different questions from what I am understanding here. If you want it tied to a specific product, you can definitely do that. Or if you're talking about when the product is available at the end of registration or something like that, you can have that to be set up as well. But in terms of the auto bill settings, that would be where you have the selected products and services. So let's say only the platinum donors would get this donation option. We'll go ahead and set that, and it's only going to apply to that product. You can also, if you have multiple categories, just select the category and it'll automatically put all products in the category, even if you're continuing to add more in the future. So for example, if we were to do our silver and bronze options, for example, even though we haven't added those in, once we mark that as the whole category is going to be an option, it's going to then apply to those future projects. You can also have different plans for different products. So I did want to just give you that example of what a category would be. But if you did want to go ahead and say, you know what, we're not going to do the whole category. We can have the monthly installments for the platinum, and we can have a different installment plan for the gold. So once you have this selected, we'll just update there. Then it becomes a matter of, if it's only going to be covering this, we might want to trigger this plan or add it by default. So you can either give it as an option or make it required if they've ordered that product. So if we have it to apply for the Platinum Donor, as soon as they've added the Platinum Donor product, then you're going to want to have that plan selected. So the steps that I did there, just to recap, I went towards the trigger, the little thunderbolt, purple thunderbolt on the side there, or you can have it on the side there. We're going to decide, how do we want it to be added? Is it going to be automatically added, or are they going to only display it as an option? So for example, if people do want to pay in full, maybe we just only show it. And then you go into products and services and choose the product that you want it to make it so it displays. So this is going to have it so once we select that product, it's automatically going to show this as an option. We'll save that trigger condition, and now you're good to go. Now, when it comes to the product itself, if there's a specific time where you want to start people on plans, you can, in the plan settings, pick a specific start date. However, you would want to have some sort of deposit that you're collecting on that first date, like a small deposit, so that they don't have to log back in to pay. Or you can, on the product settings itself, select a time where it's available to be selected. Oops. So, quick question was, would you have to create a different plan for each product in order to pull the money on the close of registration? So you wouldn't have to have a different plan for each product if you don't want to. But just to recap there on that same question, would be, it depends on how your installments are set up, and if you have, like, for example, if it's a big dollar difference and you don't need the gold donor to be making installments for the next 6 months, then you wouldn't need to do that. So you could have different end dates. You could limit the number of payments. It is going to automatically calculate based on the total that's added into the cart, or the total that the products that it's applied to. So now that we've gotten the basics here, and I'm going back to my form management to take a look at the structure that we've set up here. The terms and conditions I went through. The confirm selection is just going to have what we call the cart widget. So it displays what they've already selected, what's owed, the total, and it'll also, if they had made a payment, so if you go back to this form and you've made a payment, you would see the products that you've paid for in full. And then of course the payment options and the checkout. So I like this structure. I'm going to decide to keep it. I already have the settings where it's going to default to start on this page. So I'm going to go ahead and now test it. So I go to project front end, and now I have the donations example. So to test it out, I'll go real quick. I'm going to go, got my contact information, and I won't go through all the fields, but the reason why I wanted to create name and an email address was so that I have those options to look at how it's reported on the back end. I don't have a report that's going to include the mailing address yet, but for right now, and this is another option that you'll have, is whether or not there's a roadblock for if they have required fields filled out or not. So as is the default for an anonymous system in RegPack Flow, you have the option to go ahead and create your own credentials. You can also set up a process to where it's going to then send a default, an auto-generated password. So that's a great option to have, a setting if you have it by default where it's going to be creating that account based on cool. Where did we go? Let's go back to the dashboard. Let's start this over. Already assigned to a user. So this is something where if you want to have that setting in, you're going to want to make sure that you have in project settings, registration, and then when it comes to the anonymous registration, if it's checking for duplicate emails. So because this is tied to, I've already used the test@example.com, it's checking for that. So definitely a common mistake when you're creating a test account. Let's go ahead and log this out and we'll start it again. But that's something where if you do want to have it so that they're using their same login, it will check for that. If you don't need that, turn this off. Oops, and then we'll go ahead and save. But just for good measure, I'll use a different email address. And then go to the next step. And then we'll be able to create that account right here. So now that we've got our donation options, we'll go ahead and select Platinum. Feeling generous today. We'll go to the next step with the terms and conditions. Review what we've ordered. So we can see that we've ordered it now. It hasn't been paid for. If we had other options or a description, it would also display that here. And then we'll go to the next step. And now it's going to show us the installment options. And since we selected the Platinum option, it's giving us that installment package plan. So we can go ahead and get started. You can see now that there's the $50 deposit due today, and then it's automatically calculated the remaining installments all the way through November 30th, the end of the month, before the plan ends on December 1st. Let's go ahead and, as an example, let's check out so we can take a look at what it looks like. Oops, that would not work. Got the address of the office. Oops. Oh, and there's another way that to double check. You want to make sure that you're checking that your merchant account is set up and that payments are going through. So currently we have payments that are set up to go through automatically. We want to make sure that you have that set up. But what you can also do is take a look at the settings, double check with your payments team, with our payments team, and then we'll go ahead and have that selected. Now, another thing that that brings to my attention is by default, our forms do have the first and last name on that first form, but if you don't have that form completed, it is going to automatically generate this account based on that checkout form. So if we had just had a very bare bones structure where we had taken out some of those form fields, or they decided to skip those fields, the checkout form is now tied to that registrant information. So by default, when we went to that checkout form, we did have our test example as the default payee. So now when we take a look at what information that we have here, we can see the orders that have come in. And if we had only had the, by the way, if we had skipped the test account, so vice versa, if we didn't have, we filled out the test account, the default on the checkout form was the test account test user. But if we had not filled out these form fields and I had gone through the payment as Connor, then it would show my information automatically generated as the donor for this example. So that's something that's new in RegPack Flow to make it so that people are easily able to complete filling this out, not having to fill out their information more than once, so that their billing information can be matched to their account so that you can take a look at that. They're easily able to get that information to you. So at this point, we would be ready to go live. What you can set up, of course, is your email settings if you want to have a thank you for donating email that you're creating or customizing, and then the conditions that you want to have to send that. So for example, if they've made that payment, you'd set the conditions to send to that registrant, and you can send it from yourself, or you can create a system email, and then when you have those conditions, once they've paid. So once the payment was marked as approved, then you can have that email that is gone out. Now, they always will get a receipt from the system that's generated automatically, but if you want to have something more personalized, that's where you'd send something like this out. Oops, and let's select myself, and then our trigger is set. Now when it comes to your reports you can set up at any time you want. You're by default going to get this basic information report, which you can see what fields are in there by clicking on the info view, or on the report editor, it'll give you a list of all these fields that we've gone into. But if you wanted to get more reporting, for example, adding things like what auto bill plan they're on, or the payments that they've made, or other basic information like mailing address, you'd be able to go into your report editor and either use that same report that's going to be displayed, or you can create a new one. And you can create as many different reports, as many different email templates as you want. And then, of course, at that point, you're good to go. So let's recap what we just covered. There's a lot of different things here. So when it comes to donation recipe, we've got the template, which is in your project settings, or on the bottom, you're going to be able to go to create new project. It's that first option right here. You've got a few different templates that you can go for. So if we were to go to this second donation option, take a look at that as well. Now, once you've got this project created, you're going to have the you're going to take a look at the forms that you have. You're going to be able to edit the fields. You're going to be able to edit your donation options. You're going to be able to then test it out. You're going to be able to then set up your payment plans, and then of course your email confirmations or any follow-up that you want to do once you have that information to report on. So this donation template is going to be a lot more bare bones. That second one is going to be if you don't need all those details that we just walked through in the example here. Let me go ahead and close this out. So that way we can take a look at this new project. So this is a project that is a little bit more bare bones, as we had discussed. If you don't need all of those other fields, you've just got your donate and your checkout form. Now, this is designed using all of the tools and additions that our development team has been rolling out. It's easy to embed on your web page. It's easy to get people to go in, select their donation option, pay, and then you have their information. If they skip one of these fields, it'll automatically take, once they've selected their donation option, would automatically take from the checkout option and add those fields, connect those to the first name. So if they are only filling out their checkout form and they selected their donation, it would by default add those fields that are there, if they had skipped any, into the user management. Once you've, if you do need to include installment plans, if you want to go over time, then you just create a new form. But if you just need them to select their donation, check out, those are the options that are there. And by default, on this template, you do have different donation levels that are already there. The custom amount option, which is basically the $1 product with the ordered once off so that they can customize how much they want to donate, and then your different packages. So a lot of new stuff. With RegPack, we're always trying to find ways to include different ways to use it, and definitely donations is a big one where we work with a lot of nonprofit organizations, people collecting donations, and to be able to get the most out of RegPack, being able to have not just your program registration, but your donation page, being able to do that in one place, something that we want to make sure is easy for everybody. So let me know if you have questions coming up. Be happy to go into more detail or add in some more context in terms of donations. But those are the steps that you have, and we're going to continue to update you with more different recipes, more different ways to set up new projects in RegPack as we go along here. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Have a great weekend. I'll definitely reach out to our support team or myself if you have further questions. If you do have something that we weren't able to address today, definitely would love to follow up on another call or by email so we can get into more detail. So have a great weekend, and until next time, we'll talk again soon.